My son's wife thought I was just a silly old woman who forgot things easily. She used to walk around my house when she thought I wasn't watching, touching my things, looking at my jewelry box. But that Tuesday night, when she quietly opened my bedroom drawer to find my safe keys, her face turned white like paper and then red like a tomato. What she discovered there made her world fall apart completely. And me, I just smiled quietly in my rocking chair. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Dashiell Brown from Florida. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. My spoon stopped moving in my soup bowl when Jessica's voice interrupted our quiet lunch. So, Mom Rachel, that jewelry box upstairs in your room, does it have good locks on it? My son Tommy almost dropped his sandwich. Jessica, why would you ask something like that? But Jessica kept looking at me, waiting for my answer. There was something sneaky in her eyes that made my heart beat faster. I put my spoon down slowly, thinking carefully. Just wondering about keeping things safe, she said with a fake smile spreading across her face. You know, with all the robberies happening around here lately. What robberies? Yes. I'd lived on Maple Street for 20 years. The most exciting thing that happened was when Mr. Johnson's dog ran away last week. Jessica waved her hand like it was nothing. Oh, you probably don't know about them. They keep it quiet so people don't get scared. She leaned closer to my kitchen table. But a woman your age, living by yourself in such a big house, you must have really good ways to keep things safe. Tommy moved uncomfortably in his chair. Mom's always been careful about locking everything up. But what about insurance money? Jessica's voice got louder and more pushy. I mean, if something bad happened to you, heaven forbid, Tommy would need to know where all the important stuff is kept, wouldn't he? The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. I watched Jessica's face, seeing how her eyes got bigger when she talked about something bad happening to me. How her fingers tapped on the table when I didn't answer right away. Everything is put away nicely, I said finally. Tommy knows what he needs to know. But does he know about the special key? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Tommy looked back and forth between us, looking confused. What key? He asked. Jessica's smile got bigger. The one in your mom's bedroom drawer. The one that... How do you know about any key in my bedroom? The words came out sharper than I meant them to. For just a second, Jessica's pretend face slipped away. I saw something cold and mean flash in her eyes before the caring daughter-in-law look came back. I was looking for headache medicine last Tuesday when my head was hurting really bad, she said smoothly. Tommy told me to check your bathroom medicine cabinet, but I opened the wrong drawer first by mistake. Sorry, I didn't mean to look through your private things. Tommy nodded quickly. I remember that headache. You were really in pain. But I remembered that day too. Jessica had been upstairs for almost 40 minutes, saying her stomach hurt after we ate dinner. Long enough to do much more than just look for medicine by accident. The headache medicine is in the bathroom cabinet, I said quietly. It's always been there. Jessica's jaw got tight, but only a tiny bit. I must have been really confused from the pain. The talking went on after that, but Jessica kept asking more questions. Questions about my bank, about who else had keys to my house, about what I did every day. Each question felt like someone poking a sore spot, testing to see where it hurt. When lunch finally ended, Tommy jumped up to clean the dishes. I'll wash everything today, Mom. You cooked for us. I don't mind, I said, already picking up plates. It was what I always did, my way of thinking about the day. Tonight I really needed to wash dishes to help me think. Come on, honey, Jessica said to Tommy, putting her hand on his shoulder. Let your mom clean her own kitchen. We should go rest. They went upstairs, and I heard their bedroom door close. But as I washed the lunch dishes, I kept thinking about Jessica's questions. How she knew about a key she shouldn't know was there. How she talked so easily about me dying and Tommy getting my things. My hands moved by themselves. Wash, rinse, dry, while my brain thought about all the warning signs I had ignored for the past 4 weeks. Jessica's job loss story that never made complete sense. How she always wanted to know about my money. The way she looked at my house like she was making a map in her head. I finished the last bowl and hung the dish towel where it belonged. The kitchen looked perfect under the bright lights, everything back in its right place. But something important had changed today. The house felt different now. Not safer, but like someone was watching. Upstairs, I could hear quiet voices through the walls, then nothing. Time to see what other surprises were waiting for me in my own home. The first thing I noticed going up the stairs was my bedroom door. It was open just a little bit, maybe 2 inches of darkness showing through the crack. I stopped on the top step, holding tight to the railing. That door had been closed when I went down for lunch. I always closed it, something I'd done for 30 years of living alone, only broken recently when my son came to visit with his wife. But Tommy and Jessica were staying in the guest room down the hall. Nobody should have been in my bedroom. I stood there for half a minute listening. No sounds came from the guest room, no moving around anywhere upstairs, just the normal creaking sounds of an old house and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I pushed the door open slowly, waiting for it to make noise. Didn't. The door moved quietly, but walking into my private room felt like walking into a place where something bad had happened. Everything looked normal when I first looked. The bed was still made, corners neat and tight. My reading glasses sat on the nightstand where I'd left them. The lamp was at the same angle, but my eyes, trained by many years of keeping things exactly right, caught the things that were wrong. The closet door was hanging open exactly 5 inches. I always closed it all the way. The small gap would have bothered me all night. My dresser drawers weren't pushed in right anymore. The third drawer from the top, where I kept important papers, had been pushed in carelessly. A corner of a yellow envelope peeked out like a tongue sticking out. My stomach felt sick. I walked to the dresser, pulling the drawer out all the way. The envelopes inside had been looked through, put back in almost the right order, but not exactly. Someone had been very careful, but not careful enough. Birth certificates were mixed up with bank papers. My will, normally kept in the back envelope, had moved toward the front, and the small silver key I kept taped under the drawer bottom was gone. I checked twice, running my fingers along the wood where the tape had been. Nothing. The key that opened my safe, the safe Jessica had asked about so casually at lunch, had been found and stolen. My hand started shaking, not because I was scared but because I was angry. This wasn't random. This wasn't someone just taking a chance. Someone had come into my private bedroom and carefully gone through it, looking for specific things. Someone who knew exactly what to look for and where to find it. I walked to the safe, a small but strong box bolted inside my walk-in closet. The number lock still worked, but that didn't matter now. Jessica had the key to open it a different way. Standing in my closet, surrounded by things I'd collected over many years, I felt completely exposed. How long had she been planning this? How many times had she been in here while Tommy and I were downstairs, counting my belongings like things in a store? This hurt went deeper than just stealing. This was personal, private. Someone had touched my personal papers, had seen my money records, had handled things meant for only me. The careful walls I'd built around my life had been crossed with surgical precision. But Jessica had made one big mistake. She thought I wouldn't notice, that I was just another confused old woman, too trusting and too tired to pay attention to small details. She was wrong. I closed the dresser drawer carefully, leaving everything exactly like I'd found it. If Jessica thought she was working in secret, I needed her to keep thinking that. Let her think her sneaking around had gone unnoticed. Let her go ahead with whatever plan she was making. Because now I knew what I was dealing with. This wasn't about job loss or temporary money problems. This was about stealing, planned, calculated stealing by someone who'd spent weeks studying my daily routines and weak spots. Someone who was sleeping down the hall with my son. I turned off the bedroom light and started getting ready for bed, going through my normal nighttime routine. But every action felt different now, like I was performing for someone watching. Was Jessica listening? Did she know I'd discovered her search? As I pulled back my blankets, one thought became crystal clear in my mind. Tomorrow I would start collecting proof. Tonight I would lie awake and make plans. But first I needed to know exactly what I was fighting against. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind going over the afternoon's discoveries. Every tiny sound made me tense up. The house settling, wind through the trees outside, the quiet hum of the refrigerator downstairs. At 12:38 in the morning, according to my bedside clock, I heard movement downstairs. Soft footsteps crossed the living room floor. Not Tommy's heavy walk, something lighter, more sneaky. Jessica. I stayed perfectly still, controlling how I breathed, listening as the sounds moved toward the front of the house. Then, barely heard through the old house's thin floors, I heard her voice. Yeah, it's me. Everyone's sleeping. Phone call. Jessica was making a phone call at almost 1 in the morning, talking in whispers she thought no one could hear. I carefully sat up in bed, being careful not to let my mattress make noise. The wooden floor was cold against my bare feet as I moved closer to the heat vent that connected my bedroom to the living room below. Sometimes sounds traveled through the old air ducts in strange ways. The old woman definitely has lots of money. Jessica's voice came up clearer now. I found bank papers, investment stuff, everything. We're talking about serious cash here. My blood went cold. We're talking. She wasn't working alone. Tomorrow night, Jessica continued, Tommy's going to his poker game with friends. He goes every Wednesday 7 to 10. Gives us perfect timing. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, hands shaking as I opened the voice recording app. Whatever came next, I needed proof. I already have the safe key, Jessica was saying. Got it earlier today while they were eating lunch. The old lady keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information. The mean woman. I pressed record just as her voice became more excited, more confident. Look, I know you're worried about timing, but my credit card debts aren't going away. Those collection people aren't exactly nice, if you know what I mean. This has to happen now. Credit card debts. That explained everything. The desperation, the planned approach, the willingness to betray my son's trust. Jessica wasn't just someone stealing because she saw a chance. She was a desperate woman trapped by her own bad choices. Rachel's just some lonely old widow. Jessica's voice carried a mean tone now, probably happy for the company. She has no idea what's coming. Heck, she was asking me about keeping things safe at lunch today. Basically gave me the information I needed. Anger built in my chest, hot and overwhelming. The casual mean way she talked about me, how she made me sound like a stereotype, an easy target. But I forced myself to stay quiet, to keep recording. The beautiful thing is she'll never suspect family. Even if she figures out something's missing, Tommy will convince her she just lost stuff. You know how old people get about forgetting things. Old people. I was 68, not 98. My memory was sharp enough to remember every word of this conversation. Trust me, by Friday we'll be clear. I'll tell Tommy we got a job offer in another city. Something urgent. We'll be gone before the old woman knows what hit her. Jessica was quiet for a moment, listening to whoever was on the other end. Then she laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Yeah, well, maybe she should have been more careful about who she let into her house. Life lesson, right? The call ended. I heard Jessica moving around downstairs for another minute, probably checking locks or windows, then her footsteps on the stairs, careful and quiet. I quickly stopped the recording and slipped my phone under my pillow. The bedroom door was still open a little from her earlier search. I hadn't dared fix it and show that I'd noticed. Through the gap, I watched her shadow pass in the hallway. The guest room door opened and closed softly. For a long time after that, I lay in the darkness, thinking about what I'd learned. Jessica had credit card debts serious enough to involve mean collection people. She had someone helping her. She planned to rob me tomorrow night during Tommy's poker game, and she intended to disappear right afterward, taking my son with her into whatever mess she'd created. The violation of my bedroom suddenly seemed small compared to this bigger betrayal. Jessica wasn't just stealing from me. She was using Tommy as cover, manipulating his love and trust to set up her crime. But she'd made a serious error. She thought I was helpless, clueless, just another easy target. She had no idea that I'd spent 25 years as a bank fraud investigator before retirement, or that I dealt with plenty of desperate people trying to outsmart the system. Jessica wanted to play games with an old woman. Fine, let's see how smart she really was. Lying there in the dark with Jessica's recorded confession on my phone, I found myself thinking back to how this all started. 4 weeks ago, when Tommy's worried call had interrupted my peaceful Wednesday morning, I'd been watering my garden flowers, enjoying the sunshine when my phone rang. Tommy's name on the screen always made me happy. But his voice that day was different, stressed, worried. "Mom, I know it's sudden," but he'd paused, and I could hear him struggling not to sound upset. "Jessica lost her job last month. We've been trying to manage, but we're behind on rent." "And how far behind?" I'd asked immediately, already thinking about my checkbook. 2 months. "Mom, I hate to ask, but could we maybe stay with you for a while, just until Jessica finds something new?" The relief in his voice when I said yes had been heartbreaking. My sweet boy, 29 years old and too proud to ask for help until he had no choice. Course he could come home. Course I'd help. But even then, something had bothered me about Jessica's situation. She'd worked for the same store for 6 years, Tommy had said. Good worker reviews. The layoffs had been sudden, unexpected. Yet, when I'd asked Tommy for details, his answers were unclear. Jessica handled their money, he explained. She was managing the job search. He trusted her to figure it out. I should have asked harder questions. Should have demanded more answers. 5 days later, they'd arrived with a moving truck and too many boxes for a temporary stay. Tommy had hugged me tight on the front steps, tears in his eyes whispering thank you over and over. But Jessica had been different, colder, her hug quick and brief. Her eyes already looking around my house with a sharpness that should have alarmed me. "Nice house, Rachel," she'd said, walking through my living room like she was pricing it. "Must be worth quite a bit in today's market." At the time, I'd thought it was just natural curiosity. Now, I realized she'd been calculating, evaluating, planning. During their first week, I tried to make them comfortable, cleaned space in the guest closet, changed my daily routines to fit 3 people instead of 1. Tommy had settled in easily. He knew the house, knew my habits, but Jessica had asked endless questions about my neighborhood watch times, about which neighbors were home during the day, about my banking habits, my shopping routines, whether I kept cash in the house. All perfectly innocent questions from someone trying to get used to a new living situation. Except they weren't innocent at all. I remembered the morning she'd offered to drive me to the grocery store. "Save you a trip," she'd said. "I need to update my address for job applications anyway." But at the store, she'd hung around near the checkout, watching as I paid with my debit card. Asked casual questions about my bank types, my savings accounts. Red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to trust my son's wife. Because Tommy loved her and I loved Tommy. The credit card problems should have been obvious too. Jessica's phone rang constantly. Calls she always took in private, stepping outside or into another room. She'd claimed it was potential jobs, networking contacts. But I'd noticed how her mood changed after these calls, the tension in her shoulders, the way she'd pace afterward. In the mail, financial papers addressed to Jessica had been arriving at my house for 3 weeks. Credit card companies, collection agencies. I'd assumed they were just updating her address after her job loss. Now I understood they were demands for payment, final warnings, threats. Tommy knew none of this. He trusted Jessica completely, took her explanations without question. When she said she was handling their money, he believed her. When she said the job market was tough but she had leads, he supported her. He had no idea his wife was drowning in credit card debt. Had no clue that his childhood home was being studied like a target. My trusting, loving son was being used as the perfect cover for theft. The thought brought me back to the present moment, to my dark bedroom and the weight of Jessica's recorded confession on my phone. In 10 hours she planned to rob me. In 32 hours she planned to disappear with Tommy, dragging him into her web of debt and lies. But she'd made one huge miscalculation. She thought I was just a lonely old woman, grateful for company and easy to fool. I wasn't lonely. I was careful. I was observant. And I had 25 years of experience dealing with people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Jessica wanted to steal from me tomorrow night. Fine, let her try. But she was about to learn that some old women bite back. I woke at 7 o'clock. Same as always. The recording on my phone felt like proof of a bad dream, but the timestamp showed otherwise. 12:52 in the morning. Jessica's voice clear as day. Planning to rob me tonight. Downstairs, I started the coffee maker and began my usual breakfast routine. Pancakes, bacon, orange juice. Everything exactly as it had been for the past 4 weeks. When Tommy appeared in his pajamas, yawning and grateful, I smiled warmly. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well. Like a rock. Thank you again for letting us stay here, Mom. Jessica appeared 15 minutes later. Hair still wet from the shower. She looked rested, confident, a woman with a plan. Beautiful morning, she said, sitting in her chair. What's everyone got planned for today? I set her coffee down carefully. Oh, the usual. Might run some errands later. Jessica's eyes got sharper. What kind of errands? Just odds and ends. Hardware store, maybe the bank. I watched her reaction. A tiny muscle jumped near her left eye. Nothing exciting. Bank. Jessica leaned forward. Everything okay with your accounts? Tommy laughed. Mom's always been paranoid about checking her money in person. Old habits. Not paranoid, I corrected gently. Careful. You can't be too careful these days. Jessica nodded. Too much. Absolutely right. Identity theft, online tricks. It's dangerous out there for someone your age. Someone my age. There it was again. That casual put-down wrapped in fake concern. Speaking of careful, Jessica continued. I've been thinking about your house security. This neighborhood seems pretty safe. But you never know. It's perfectly safe, Tommy interrupted. Mom's lived here 20 years without problems. But Jessica wasn't listening to her husband. Her attention stayed locked on me. Still a woman living alone. Valuable things in the house. Pays to be ready. You mentioned that safe upstairs. Is that where you keep important papers? I took a slow sip of coffee, thinking about my response. Some things, yes. What about cash? I mean, if the bank's closed or something happened, it's smart to have emergency money easily available. The nerve was breathtaking. She was sitting at my breakfast table, eating food I'd made, asking me to list my valuables for her convenience. I have what I need, I said simply. Jessica tried a different way. You mentioned being a deep sleeper last week. That's good. I worry about older ladies who can't get proper rest. I hadn't mentioned any such thing, but I nodded anyway. Oh yes. Once I'm out, I'm dead to the world, especially lately. I've been so tired in the evenings. That's normal at your age, Jessica said. Your body needs more rest. Tommy shot her a look. Jessica, that's rude. No, she's right, I said quickly. I usually take something to help me sleep. Knocks me right out until morning. Jessica's posture relaxed noticeably. Perfect. Let her think I'd be unconscious and helpless tonight. Well, I should let you folks plan your day, I said, standing to clear the dishes. I'll probably go to bed early tonight. All this family time has me more tired than usual. That sounds perfect, Mom, Tommy said. You deserve rest. Jessica helped carry plates to the kitchen, and I caught her glancing toward the stairs, toward my bedroom, calculating, planning. You know, she said casually, I might stay up late tonight, watch some TV in the living room. I'm kind of a night person. Course she was. I smiled and nodded. Make yourself comfortable. The remote's on the coffee table. After breakfast, Jessica announced she needed to make some calls about job possibilities. Tommy decided to organize their things in the guest room. Had my chance. I think I'll run those errands now, I told them. You two enjoy some quiet time together. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Jessica watching from the upstairs window. Not the guest room window, my bedroom window. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tonight couldn't come soon enough. The hardware store was my first stop. I needed supplies, but more importantly, I needed to think through every detail of what was coming. Jessica had made her plans crystal clear at breakfast. Tonight, while I supposedly slept deeply with the help of medicine, she planned to enter my bedroom, find the key she'd spotted weeks ago, and open my safe. Simple, clean, the perfect crime against a trusting old woman. Except the key wasn't there anymore. I'd moved it at 6 this morning after lying awake since Jessica's phone call. The small silver key now sat safely in my kitchen junk drawer, buried under rubber bands and paper clips. Jessica could search my bedroom dresser until her fingers bled. She'd find nothing. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her caught red-handed, embarrassed, exposed for exactly what she was. I wanted proof so clear that even Tommy couldn't deny his wife's true nature. In the hardware store's art supply section, I found what I needed. A small paint bomb, the kind used for marking thieves. Spring-loaded, designed to create maximum mess with minimum effort. Perfect. I also picked up a bag of bright red powder paint, the kind that sticks to everything and never quite washes off. Crimson red, because if Jessica wanted to be a thief, she should look the part. Back home I found the house empty. A note from Tommy on the kitchen counter. Gone shopping with Jessica. Back by 3. Love you. Perfect timing. Had 2 hours. In my basement craft room, I carefully took apart the paint bomb. The mechanism was beautifully simple. A spring-loaded device that would trigger when enough pressure was applied. I replaced the harmless marking powder with my red paint mixture, adding just enough to coat someone thoroughly without causing injury. The tricky part was getting it right. I needed the device to trigger when Jessica opened my dresser drawer and reached inside, but not from light contact. After several tests with a wooden ruler, I found the right pressure. Installation required precision. I placed the changed bomb inside my dresser drawer, positioning it so the trigger would activate when someone reached toward the back, exactly where the key had been hidden. To anyone looking inside, it would look like normal drawer contents. Few old letters, some buttons, random items, but reach in with purpose. Search with intent and surprise. I tested the setup 5 times, using a yardstick to copy Jessica's searching motion. Each test triggered perfectly, sending a cloud of red paint exactly where an intruder's face and hands would be. The device reset easily, ready for its real show. Next came the key placement trick. I positioned a fake key in plain sight near the front of the drawer. An old jewelry box key that looked similar enough to fool someone in a hurry. Jessica would spot it immediately, reach for it confidently, and trigger my surprise. The beauty was in the psychology. Jessica expected stealth, silence, success. She'd planned for a quick, quiet theft. She hadn't planned for a paint explosion that would mark her as clearly as a bank die pack marks robbers. By 2:45, everything was in place. The drawer looked innocent and normal. The trap was armed and ready. Jessica would walk into my bedroom tonight, expecting to find a helpless victim. Instead, she'd find red-handed justice. I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Tommy and Jessica returning from their shopping trip, probably feeling normal and domestic. Jessica had no idea her crime scene had become a trap. I closed the dresser drawer gently and headed downstairs to greet them, wearing my best grandmother smile. Tonight was going to be very interesting. I need to run out for a quick errand, I announced after lunch. Won't be long. Tommy looked up from putting away groceries. Need help with anything, Mom? Just picking up something at the electronics store. You two relax. You've done enough shopping for one day. Jessica barely glanced up from her phone, but I caught the flash of interest in her eyes. The old woman running errands alone, leaving the house unguarded, probably confirming her mental map of my routine. The Best Buy clerk was a helpful young woman named Sarah, who didn't blink when I explained I wanted a security camera for my bedroom. Lot of break-ins in your area. Yes, something like that. I need something small with good night vision, and it needs to be wireless. Sarah showed me several options. I settled on a compact model that connected to my smartphone with motion detection and 10 hours of battery life. The camera was smaller than a book and came with magnetic mounting options. You'll want to test the placement, Sarah advised. The app lets you see exactly what the camera sees in real time. Perfect. Paid cash and drove home. The camera sitting in its box beside me like a secret weapon. Back home, I found Jessica and Tommy watching television in the living room. They looked comfortable, normal, like a regular couple staying with Tommy's mother. Not thieves preparing for a robbery. Just going to rest for a few minutes, I told them, heading upstairs. All this running around has me beat. In my bedroom, I closed the door and got to work. The camera needed to capture Jessica's approach to the dresser, her reaction to opening the drawer, and the paint explosion that would follow, but it also needed to stay completely hidden. I tested several positions using the smartphone app. On top of my dresser, the angle was wrong. Behind my clock, too obvious. Finally, I found the perfect spot. Tucked between books on my bookshelf, angled to capture both the dresser and the center of the room. The magnetic mount held perfectly, and the camera's black case blended with the book covers. Unless someone was specifically looking for spy equipment, it was invisible. I spent 15 minutes adjusting the angle through the app, making sure I had optimal coverage. The motion detection was sensitive enough to activate when someone entered the room, but not so sensitive that normal sounds or outside noise would cause false recordings. Battery life was crucial. The camera needed to last from now until Jessica made her move, potentially 6 to 8 hours. I switched it to motion-activated mode to save power, then tested the night vision ability by turning off the lights. The infrared image was crystal clear. Jessica's face would be perfectly visible when she triggered my trap. I also tested the recording function, making sure the sound was clear enough to capture any words Jessica might speak during her crime. If she said anything incriminating, and desperate people often talk to themselves, I'd have that proof too. The setup was elegant in its simplicity. Jessica would enter my room expecting darkness and silence. Instead, she'd be filmed from the moment she crossed the threshold. The camera would capture her search, her discovery of the fake key, her reaching into the drawer, and the spectacular paint explosion that followed. Visual proof, audio proof, and physical proof, all in one beautiful package. I repositioned a few books to better hide the camera, then stood back to admire my work. Everything looked normal, innocent, just an old woman's bedroom, ready for a peaceful night's sleep. Downstairs, I could hear Tommy and Jessica talking quietly, planning their evening, no doubt. Jessica was probably counting the hours until her theft window opened. She had no idea the window had become a trap. I checked my phone one final time. The camera feed was clear, the recording function active, the battery showing full charge. Everything was ready. Tonight, Jessica would finally show her true colors, and thanks to modern technology, every moment would be preserved in high-definition detail. Let the games begin. Dinner passed peacefully with Tommy chatting about neighborhood news and Jessica checking her phone frequently. I played my part perfectly, the tired grandmother, ready for an early bedtime after a busy day. By 8:30, we'd settled in the living room. Tommy curled up with a magazine while I claimed my usual chair, making a show of rubbing my forehead. Long day, I murmured. Think I'll turn in early tonight. Jessica looked up from her phone immediately. Actually, Rachel, I was hoping we could share some tea first. You know, mother and daughter-in-law bonding time. The suggestion came out of nowhere, but her tone was carefully casual. Too casual. That's sweet, Tommy said, not looking up from his magazine. You two should spend more time together. I was thinking about that chamomile tea I saw in your kitchen, Jessica continued. Relaxing stuff, perfect for before bed. I kept my expression neutral, but internally I was fascinated. Jessica had been planning this conversation probably since breakfast. The timing, the suggestion, the specific mention of sleepy tea. Nothing was accidental. I appreciate the thought, I said, but I'm on medicine that doesn't mix well with herbal tea. Jessica's smile got tighter, almost invisibly. Come on, one small cup won't hurt. We're practically family. Really, I should avoid it completely. Dad's right, Tommy chimed in. The doctor was very specific about her heart medication, but Jessica wasn't giving up easily. What about just a sip then? A tiny taste to celebrate. She paused, searching for something to celebrate. Family. The persistence was telling. A normal person would have accepted my first refusal politely. Jessica was pushing because she needed me to drink something specific, something that would ensure I slept deeply tonight. I tell you what, she said, standing up. I'll make myself a cup and we can just sit and talk. No pressure for you to drink. She disappeared into the kitchen before I could object. I heard cabinet doors opening and the clink of cups. When she returned, she carried 2 mugs, one with steaming tea, one empty. Changed my mind, she said, settling back onto the couch. Made you just a little bit for the toast, barely a sip. She held out the second mug. The tea inside caught the lamplight, looking innocent enough. But I'd investigated bank fraud for 25 years. And desperate people always got sloppy. Jessica, I really can't. One tiny sip, she insisted. Tommy, tell your mother one sip won't hurt her. Tommy looked between us, sensing tension he couldn't identify. If Mom says no, maybe you should listen to that. Jessica's jaw tightened. For just a moment, her mask slipped completely. I saw frustration, calculation, and something close to panic flicker across her features. You know what? I said, standing carefully. I'm more tired than I thought. I think I'll take one of those sleeping pills and call it a night. Jessica's posture changed immediately. Sleeping pills. Doctor gave them to me last month. Strong stuff. Knocks me out completely. I'll be dead to the world until morning. Relief flooded Jessica's face. That sounds perfect. You need your rest. Sweet dreams, Mom, Tommy said, kissing my cheek. See you in the morning. I made a show of climbing the stairs slowly, pausing to grip the railing like an old woman struggling with tiredness. At the top I turned back. Don't stay up too late, you two. Jessica, help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Thanks, Rachel. Sleep well. In my bedroom, I went through the motions of preparing for sleep, changing clothes, brushing teeth, turning down the bed, but I also double-checked my camera positioning and confirmed the paint trap was ready. I turned off my bedroom light and settled onto the bed fully clothed, positioning myself where I could see the hallway through my slightly open door. Downstairs, I could hear the television playing softly, Jessica and Tommy talking in hushed voices, then Tommy's footsteps on the stairs. The guest room door closing. Jessica stayed downstairs waiting, probably watching the clock, calculating how long it would take for my sleeping pill to take full effect. Check my phone. 10:15. The camera showed my empty bedroom in perfect night vision detail. The trap was set. The stage was prepared. All I had to do now was wait for my son's wife to reveal her true nature. At 2:28 in the morning, I heard the first creak on the stairs. I'd been lying motionless for hours, positioned so I could see the hallway through my barely open door. My phone showed the camera feed in real time. My empty bedroom, waiting in perfect night vision clarity. Jessica moved like a professional thief, avoiding the spots on the stairs that groaned under weight. She'd learned my house's secrets during her 4-week stay, mapping every sound that might betray her presence. The hallway floorboard outside my room whispered under her weight, then silence. She was listening, making sure her sleeping pill story had worked its magic. I controlled my breathing, keeping it deep and regular. The performance of my life, with my son's future hanging in the balance. My door handle turned with glacial slowness. Jessica's silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit by the faint hallway nightlight. She stood frozen for 20 seconds, watching my supposedly unconscious form. Satisfied I was deeply sedated, she slipped inside. Jessica moved with predatory confidence now, believing herself invisible and untouchable. Her dark clothing made her nearly invisible, but I could track her movement by sound and the shifting shadows. She approached my dresser with the certainty of a woman who'd planned every step. 4 weeks of spying had taught her exactly where to find what she needed, the key that would unlock my safe, my security, my life savings. I watched her position herself directly in front of the dresser. Her hands reached for the third drawer, the one containing my hidden key and her spectacular surprise. The drawer slid open smoothly. For a split second, Jessica's posture radiated triumph. She'd found her target, reached inside confidently, fingers seeking the silver key that would solve all her problems. Then my paint bomb exploded. Boom! The sound was magnificent, like a firecracker crossed with a small explosion. Bright red paint erupted in a glorious cloud, coating Jessica from head to toe in crimson paint. The explosion echoed through the house like a gunshot. Jessica stumbled backward, cursing violently as paint settled in her hair, on her clothes, across her shocked face. She looked like she'd been attacked by a paint factory explosion, transformed into a walking fire engine. "What the heck?" she gasped, brushing frantically at the paint that clung to everything. I performed my awakening with perfect acting, sitting up with startled confusion. "What in the world?" I called out, reaching for my bedside lamp. "What was that noise?" Light flooded the room, revealing Jessica in all her red glory. She stood frozen beside my dresser, covered head to toe in bright paint, holding the fake key I'd placed as bait. "Jessica." I blinked with theatrical bewilderment. "What are you doing in my bedroom?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Paint dripped from her hair like red rain. I heard a noise," she stammered. "Thought someone might be breaking in." "Breaking in?" I glanced around my room with apparent confusion. "And you ended up painted." Jessica looked down at herself, finally grasping the full extent of her transformation. She resembled a rejected Valentine's decoration. Bright red paint clinging to every surface of her body. "There was some kind of trap," she said weakly. "Trap?" I tilted my head innocently. "In my bedroom." From down the hall came the sound of feet hitting the floor. Tommy, awakened by the explosion, was coming to investigate. Jessica's eyes widened with panic. "How do you explain being covered in paint while robbing your mother-in-law at 3 in the morning? Rachel, what's happening?" Tommy's voice carried worry and growing alertness. Jessica opened her mouth desperately, but no believable explanation emerged. She was caught literally red-handed in the act of betraying our family. I allowed myself the smallest smile as footsteps approached down the hallway. Justice, it turned out, was beautifully colorful. "Mom, are you okay?" Tommy appeared in the doorway, tying his robe belt with quick, worried movements. Then he stopped dead, taking in the scene before him. Me sitting up in bed, apparently confused and concerned. Jessica standing beside my open dresser drawer, covered from head to toe in bright red paint like she'd been dipped in a paint bucket. "What in the world?" Tommy's voice caught. "Jessica, why do you look like a stop sign?" Jessica's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Paint dripped from her hair with each movement, settling on my bedroom carpet like red snow. "There was a noise," she said finally, her voice strained. "Came to check on your mother. 3 in the morning. Tommy's tone sharpened. "And you ended up covered in what is that paint?" "Some kind of security device," Jessica said quickly, brushing frantically at her red clothes. "It went off when I opened the drawer." Tommy's eyes moved from Jessica to the open dresser drawer, then to me. "Mom, do you have security devices in your furniture?" I maintained my expression of elderly confusion. "Not that I know of, sweetheart. I was sound asleep until that explosion woke me up." "Then why were you in her dresser drawer, Jessica?" Tommy's voice carried a new edge I'd never heard before. Protective, suspicious. Jessica's story began crumbling in real time. "I was looking for something to help you sleep. You were tossing and turning, and I thought Rachel might have some extra sleep aids." "Sleep aids?" Tommy's eyebrows lifted. "In her bedroom dresser." I thought maybe Jessica gestured weakly at the drawer, sending more paint cascading to the floor. "Jessica," I said gently, "my medicines are in the bathroom cabinet. They always have been." The silence that followed felt heavy with implications. Tommy looked between us, his expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "So let me understand this," he said slowly. "You left our bed at 3 in the morning, came into my mother's bedroom while she was sleeping, and opened her private dresser drawer, looking for medicine you knew wasn't there." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Tommy's voice rose slightly. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife was going through my mother's personal belongings in the middle of the night." Jessica's desperation grew more visible. "Tommy, you have to understand. I was just trying to help." "Help with what exactly?" I interjected mildly. "What were you hoping to find in that drawer?" Jessica's eyes darted between us. The question hung in the air like an accusation. She swallowed hard. I was confused, disoriented. "I thought I heard someone breaking in." "Breaking in," Tommy repeated flatly. So, you decided to search my mother's bedroom furniture. I wasn't searching. Then what do you call opening her dresser drawer? Jessica's paint-covered hands clenched into fists. Why are you interrogating me like this? I'm your wife. The defensive anger in her voice seemed to hit Tommy like a physical blow. He took a step back, and I saw something change in his expression. The last traces of trust beginning to crumble. You're right, he said quietly. You are my wife, which is why I'm asking you to explain why you're standing in my mother's bedroom at 3 in the morning covered in paint with your hand in her private drawer. Jessica looked trapped, cornered by the weight of her own impossible explanations. Paint continued to fall from her clothes like evidence of her guilt. I can explain everything, she said desperately. Then please do, Tommy crossed his arms. Because right now I'm very confused about what my wife was doing in here. I watched my son's face and saw the exact moment his protective instincts shifted from Jessica to me. The moment he began to see the situation not as a misunderstanding, but as a threat to his mother. Jessica must have seen it too, because her next words came out edged with panic. Tommy, you have to trust me. But trust, once broken by paint and lies, isn't easily repaired. Tommy's eyes stayed fixed on Jessica, and I could see his mental wheels turning, processing, analyzing, drawing conclusions that his heart didn't want to accept. Jessica, he said slowly, I need you to tell me the truth right now. What were you really doing in my mother's bedroom? Jessica opened her mouth, but I knew the moment had come. My son deserved better than watching his wife spin more lies. He deserved the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. Tommy, I said gently, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. There's something you need to hear. Jessica's face went white beneath the paint. Rachel, don't what? Tommy's voice sharpened dangerously. Don't what, Jessica? I found the recording from 2 nights ago and held up my phone. Sweetheart, I recorded something last night. Phone conversation. I think you should listen to it. No, Jessica said quickly. Tommy, whatever she thinks she heard. Be quiet, Tommy snapped, never taking his eyes off me. Mom, play it. Press play. Jessica's voice filled the room clear and damning. Yeah, it's me. Everyone's sleeping. The old woman definitely has lots of money. I found bank papers, investment stuff, everything. We're talking about serious cash here. Tommy's face went completely still. His eyes widened as he listened to his wife's voice discussing my finances with a stranger. Tomorrow night, Tommy's going to his poker game with friends. He goes every Wednesday 7 to 10. Gives us perfect timing. Stop it, Jessica said desperately. Tommy, I can explain. Shut up. Tommy's voice was deadly quiet. Just shut up and let me listen. Jessica's voice continued from the phone. Already have the safe key. Got it earlier today while they were eating lunch. The old lady keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information. Tommy's hand flew to his mouth. He stared at Jessica like he was seeing a stranger. Look, I know you're worried about timing, but my credit card debts aren't going away. Those collection people aren't exactly nice, if you know what I mean. Credit card debts. Tommy whispered. What credit card debts? The recording continued. Rachel's just some lonely old widow, probably happy for the company. She has no idea what's coming. I watched my son's face crumble as he heard his wife's casual dismissal of me. Her assessment of my vulnerability. Her cold calculation of how to exploit my kindness. The beautiful thing is she'll never suspect family. Even if she figures out something's missing, Tommy will convince her she just lost stuff. You know how old people get about forgetting things. Tommy made a sound like he'd been physically struck. His wife's voice discussing how to use his trust to cover her theft of his mother. Trust me, by Friday we'll be clear. I'll tell Tommy we got a job offer in another city, something urgent. We'll be gone before the old woman knows what hit her. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy stared at Jessica, tears streaming down his face. Credit card debts, he whispered. You were going to rob my mother. Tommy, listen to me. You called her a lonely old fool. His voice broke. You were going to steal from her and then disappear, taking me with you as your cover story. Jessica tried to step toward him, but he backed away like she was dangerous. How much? He demanded. How much do you owe? It doesn't matter. How much? Jessica's shoulders sagged. 38,000. Tommy's legs seemed to give out. He sank against the doorframe, staring at the woman he'd married. You've been lying to me for months, he said. About everything. The job loss, our money, why we really needed to stay here. I was trying to protect you. By planning to rob my mother. Tommy's voice rose to a shout. By using me as your alibi while you destroyed the woman who raised me. Jessica tried once more. Tommy, we can work this out. No. Tommy straightened, and I saw steel enter his spine. No, we can't. You planned to victimize my mother. You called her names. You were going to let me believe she was losing her memory while you stole from her. She looked at Jessica with disgust. Get out. Me. Get out of my mother's house now. For the first time since I'd known her, Jessica had nothing to say. Jessica stood there for another 15 seconds, paint still dripping from her hair like red tears. Then something in Tommy's expression, pure protective fury, finally convinced her that her marriage was over. This isn't finished, she said, her voice turning ugly. Half of everything we own is mine. I'll get my share. You mean half of our debt? Tommy's voice was ice cold. Because that's all we have, Jessica. Credit card debt that I knew nothing about. I'll fight you in court. With what money? Tommy stepped closer to her, and I was proud to see he wasn't backing down. You just admitted you owe 38,000 to mean people. What exactly are you going to fight me with? Jessica's bravado crumbled. She looked at me with something approaching hatred. This is your fault, old woman. You turned him against me. No, Tommy said firmly. You did that yourself. When you decided to plan a robbery instead of asking for help. When you called my mother names. When you lied to me for months. Jessica tried one last desperate approach. Tommy, we're married. Took vows. You broke those vows when you planned to commit a felony against my family. Tommy pointed toward the door. Get your things and get out now. I watched Jessica realize that her con was truly over. No more manipulation. No more lies. No more playing the victim. Tommy had heard her own words condemn her. She left the room without another word, tracking paint through my house like a trail of evidence. We could hear her in the guest room throwing clothes into bags with bitter violence. Tommy sank into my bedside chair, looking exhausted. Mom, I'm so sorry, he whispered. I brought her into your home. I put you in danger. Sweetheart, you couldn't have known. I should have seen the signs, the phone calls, the way she asked questions about your money. He looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. How long have you known? Since 2 nights ago. I heard that phone call and knew I had to protect both of us. Tommy managed a weak smile. The paint bomb was genius. I wanted her caught red-handed, or should I say paint-handed. That earned me a genuine laugh, even through his tears. Jessica reappeared in the doorway with 2 hastily packed bags, still looking like a defeated fire truck. Tommy, leave your key on the kitchen counter, he said without looking at her. Don't contact me. My lawyer will contact yours. Jessica opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to realize the futility. She walked away, and a minute later we heard the front door slam. Tommy and I sat in silence for a few moments, listening to Jessica's car start and drive away into the night. Can I stay here? Tommy asked quietly. Just until I figure things out. Sweetheart, this is your home for as long as you want it. 4 months later, I was making coffee when Tommy came downstairs, dressed for his new job at the local bank. He'd taken to morning routines with the same careful precision I'd always admired. Morning, Mum. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well. Like a baby. She poured himself coffee and settled at the kitchen table. Any regrets about the great paint trap of April? Chuckled. Only that I didn't film her face when it exploded. Tommy's divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Jessica had contested nothing. Hard to argue property division when you're facing potential criminal charges and 38,000 in credit card debt. Bank busy today? Yes. New account training at 10. Then I'm helping Mr. Peterson with his business loan. Tommy smiled. I love it there. Organized, honest, full of people who actually appreciate hard work. He paused at the door. Thank you, Mom, for protecting me, for handling everything so smartly. Thank you for trusting me when it mattered most. After he left, I sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper. The house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for months. No tension, no lies, no one calculating how to exploit my kindness. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Forgot to mention Mrs. Peterson asked if you'd help her install a security system. Apparently, word got around about your innovative home protection methods. I laughed out loud. Maybe I should patent the paint bomb approach to home security. Outside, summer was settling over Maple Street. My neighborhood remained quiet and safe, just as it had been before Jessica's brief invasion of our lives. Sometimes justice comes from courtrooms and police. Sometimes it comes from trusting your instincts, setting careful traps, and letting people reveal their true natures. And sometimes justice is colorful. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to Granny's Voice, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.